Before this video gets started, make sure you go down below, hit the subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon to make sure you're notified next time I upload a new video. Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm actually going to be showing you how to sow tomatoes. And I'm going to be sowing 4 different varieties actually, which are Tigrella, a Ddraig Goch, which is the first variety of tomato to be named in the Welsh language. I'm also going to be growing, I think it's a black cherry tomato variety, and I'm also going to be growing a yellow pear variety. And actually, I don't know where I'm going to be fitting all these, because if you look, that greenhouse is starting to get full with seedlings already. And then if you look over here, that greenhouse is a mess and also quite full at the same time, because I use it to store things over winter. So why don't you join me along this video and join in. So I'll be showing you how I sow my tomatoes, and you can follow along if you want to. So make sure that you go down below, hit the like button and leave a comment to let me know what varieties of tomato you're growing this year. So you may have been asking or thinking, what do you actually need to grow your own tomatoes? So I'm going to show you that now. So what you're going to need some compost that I'm going to put in this potting tray. I'll link one of them down below if you haven't got one already, but they're not essential. They're just make your life easier if you're sowing a lot of stuff. You're going to need some sort of general purpose compost, or some sieved homegrown compost or homemade compost. It's up to you. And you'll also need something to sow them in. So I'm sowing them in these sort of 6 module trays because I've got them left and I don't want to bin them at all. So yeah, so that's what I'm sowing mine in. And also, the most important ingredient is actually, hold on, let me find them in my pocket. I think I've got them. Oh, actually, I don't want to drop them. But you'll also need tomato seeds, which is very important because you can't grow tomatoes without tomato seeds. And this video is actually going to be filmed in this sort of vlog format mainly. I'll be putting the camera on a tripod for a bit, but I thought I'd try out this format of video because I quite like watching videos that are in this format, because I find it's quite personal. It actually feels like you're following the person around with what they're doing, and you actually sort of feel like you're part of what they're doing. So the first step that you need to do is to fill up your pots with compost. I'm going to firstly fill that potting tray with compost, so I can then fill the modular trays from that. But if you're just doing it without one of these tray things, then you can just put it straight into the modular trays or pots that you're sowing into. So now let's get on with that first job. I actually time-lapsed me filling these, but it didn't really end up very long, so I just decided to do these B-roll clips instead. So as you'll have seen from those B-roll shots, or the B-roll shots that are going on now, I filled up the compost trays, and I just want to speak, before I actually move on to planting the seeds and things like that, I just want to speak a bit about what the compost that you use. So you need to make sure that it's good for the plants and also good for the environment. So something that ticks both those boxes is a good organic, peat-free compost. One that I use is Melcourt. I'm not associated with them at all, but that's just my personal recommendation. I've used it for the last year and I really like it. But if you can't get hold of that and you've got homemade compost, then you can just use that too. Homemade compost often is a little bit more clumpy, so you may need to sieve it as well, but that's no bother. But make sure that you go down below as well, because I'll link both one of those potting trays there and also a compost soil sieve for if you're using homemade compost, because that can come in use. Because as you can see, the shop bought compost is actually quite fine, and that's really good for seed starting because it helps the first root, the radicle, which is the name for the first root, actually get a good start in the soil and actually get down and set some good roots. And the other note as well with tomatoes is that once they start growing, when the seedlings start to grow, you need to make sure actually that you're potting them on as soon as the roots fill the pot. So in those modules, as soon as I see some roots at the bottom, I'll make sure to pot them on into a slightly bigger pot. And it's important that you don't start in a too big of a pot. So don't go starting them in one of these if that's what you want to grow them in eventually. Make sure that you start them in a small pot and gradually increase it to make sure that, I don't really know why, but I just know from experience it doesn't go well if you just sow it straight into a big pot. You need to gradually increase it so it doesn't get overwhelmed by the amount of space it can grow in. And I know this is against nature because normally seeds would just fall on the soil, which is unlimited, but it's just what I've found to work. It's just to slowly pot them on through incrementally improving the sizes. But you can do whatever you want. but that's what I do and that's what I'd recommend to get the best chances of good growth. So to get started with sowing the seeds, the first thing you need to make sure is that you've got labels for what varieties and basically just saying it's a tomato, because I've made this mistake so many times and I vowed this year that I wouldn't make it again. So I have decided that I'm actually going to label things this year, and I actually got some labels for Christmas because my family know me too well. So basically what I've got, I'm just going to spin you around. I've got here some 6 module trays here, and there's a label in each, so I'm going to do 3 modules of each variety. So that should be good, and if they don't germinate then I've still got enough other ones to make up for that. And when you sow the seeds, you don't need to make sure that they're an exact depth really, because in nature that wouldn't happen. The plant wouldn't go, oh Mr. Tomato, I want you to go this deep. It would just fall and it would happen to grow. So what you need to do is you just do it, a general rule of thumb, just push it in about twice its depth, maybe a bit more. It's generally up to you, but you just make sure that it's covered with probably at least a few millimeters of compost on top, and that should do you fine. Or alternatively, instead of compost, you can cover it with a light covering of vermiculite or something like that. So as you can see what I'm doing, I'm just going to prod a little hole in with my finger. You can use a dibber, you can use a stick, you can use literally whatever you want, and I'm just making sure there's a little hole to put the seeds in. And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, because it's been proven that getting your hands into soil or compost is actually a mood booster, and it's actually been scientifically proven. So make sure you get those hands nice and dirty. So I'm now going to put those seeds in there, and I'll show you now when I put my camera on a tripod. So I'm over here now, and I could actually bring my bench over here to sit down, but I'm actually kneeling on the floor, which I don't really know why. So the dry gork ones actually come in like a little, basically like a test tube they look like to me, but you've got to be quite careful with them. And these are grown on angle, see these ones. So I'll put those seeds in. Oh, looks like I need one more. And if you enjoy this type of video, then make sure you let me know down below. I'm hoping to do a bit more sort of sow along videos in the future. So I'll just cover them back over with compost and give them a good pressing down. And then put this back into the seed packet with all of the seeds that are left over. So that's a dry gork, the red dragon, done. And now I'm going to move on to these ones. But actually, I've just realised these ones you can't tear open, and I'm going to need some scissors. So I'm just going to pop inside and get some scissors. So as you can see, I went inside and I got some scissors, and I'm now going to plant the yellow pear ones. So I've got this packet here, and I just thought I'd change the angle on the camera a bit so you could have some interesting shots. Try and get that open. Let's get some of them out. Oh, these are quite small seeds. I reckon these are a bit more of a plum or a cherry type tomato. So there we are. And then again, just covering them in. And then I'll water these inside. And actually, a trick that I've learnt from Charles Dowding's videos is actually, rather than putting them all out on the windowsill, waiting for them to germinate, because when they're seeds they don't actually need any light, because if you think, they're under the soil. So what he does is he stacks them on top of each other, so you can actually fit more inside his windowsills. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them a water, put them on a tray, and I'm going to stack them a bit, and then I'll keep checking them every day, and as soon as I see some growth, then I'll put them out so they can get enough light. So now I'm going to plant some of the other ones, and they're in this tray here. I'm actually really excited for the growing season now, because we're actually getting some nice weather now, even though it's cold and I'm still wearing a hat. It's March and the weather's good, so there's no reason not to be happy and excited. So just get some of those. So they are the black cherry tomato. That's the other thing, is when you're labelling seeds, you need to make sure that you actually sow them next to the right label, because otherwise that's even more of a mistake and a mess. So there, I'll just pat them down, and that's them done. Fold over the seed packet, and I should be able to use them next year. I actually think it's just started to snow or rain. But anyway, let's try and get this packet of seeds planted. There we go. And then I'll pat them down again, just as I have done all along. I'll give these a sprinkling of water actually when I go inside, and then I'll stack them on top of each other as I said. And all you need to do to look after them now is to keep them moist, not too wet, not too dry. And then if you're stacking them like I am, then keep checking them as regularly as you can. As soon as you see a shoot coming up, then you should take them off each other and let them have some light so that they don't get too like leggy or just get squashed or whatever. And then you should also then, when they get bigger, just keep checking the bottom, and as soon as you see some roots through the holes, then you can repot them into a slightly bigger pot. And I might have one to show you. So yeah, so even just like a deeper pot like this, because it's deeper, it's got more room for the roots. So you just need to make sure that the roots can constantly be pushing out. And then once you've got them in their final position, whether that's in the ground or in a big pot, then you can just leave them and they'll be fine. So I've actually just finished sowing them now. And as you see, I patted them down. And then the last thing that you need to do is to give them a bit of water. So actually, as you will have seen, or as you will see on the B-roll here, it just poured with rain here. So I just had to go inside and then wait. So that gave mine a bit of a water, but you may need to just do it with maybe an old milk bottle, maybe with some few holes in the lid, or an old drinks bottle or whatever, just to like put a little bit of a drizzle over the top, which is what it just needs. And then if you're stacking them like I am until they germinate, then that should keep the moisture in. But if not, then you may need to give them another bit, maybe in a week or two, depending on how hot your house is. And within maybe 7 to 14 days, if your room temperature is about 20-21 degrees, then they should germinate in around 7 to 14 days. But if it's a bit cooler, obviously it'll take a bit longer. Now I would be sowing them in this harvest greenhouse here, but I'm just a bit worried because mine's not heated, because it's solar powered. I'm starting to get a bit worried because I've sowed a lot in there and it's starting to get quite cold at night again. Especially in there, I think it got to 2 degrees last night. So I'm not risking putting anything like tomatoes in there. I've got lettuce in there and I've got, I think, cabbage as well, but they should cope. But I don't want to put anything too tender in there. So that is currently just for the more hardy seedlings. But I bet in a month or two it should be fine. And it's getting to 15 degrees in the day, so that's fine. Especially when the sun comes out. But anyway, back to about sowing. And I've actually got another video on this YouTube channel from last year all about growing tomatoes after their seedlings. So make sure you go and check it out up here to make sure that you can find out how to grow tomatoes after their seedlings. So this video is just about how to sow them and how to care for them when they're seedlings, and then that video is basically how to care for them in general when they're plants. But once they've grown up a bit and when the last frost is gone, you can, or last frost in a greenhouse or whatever, you can plant them in a greenhouse like that, or in the soil like that. And it depends on the variety. There's some like Moneymaker that can be put in greenhouses or outside, or there's others that are made for outside or others that are made for greenhouses. So make sure you check the back of your seed packet before you put them wherever you're going to put them. So I hope this video actually helped you if you were going to plant your own tomatoes from seed at home. And if it did, then make sure you let me know by leaving a like on this, and if you're new here, subscribing to my channel, because it really helps. And I'm getting so close to 1,000 and I want to get there by the end of April, but it's going to be a push, but I really hope I can. But anyway, on another note, just because it's the end of the video, I'm just going around, because it's been quite windy recently, I just need to check the garden to make sure there's nothing that's going to blow around or come loose if we get any more wind, to make sure that basically I don't need to worry if it gets windy again. So the main thing for me to check is like cloches, net covers, fleece, and mini polytunnels and things like that. So I've got this mini polytunnel here, and this is a bit rustly, but I did put some new stuff to weigh it down on it before this wind came, so that's fine. And also my compost bag mulch thing here, that's fine. And also then lastly is this netting thing here. and that's also looking okay. These kale plants are looking a bit sorry for themselves. They've all flopped a bit, but they're at the end of their life now. I just need to get rid of them, ready for the coming season. But other than that, the garden is looking very springy. There's daffodils, the buds are starting to sprout on some things. There's the bleeding hearts plant or flower is coming up from through the ground. So yeah, so it's really, really feeling like spring. So let me know down below what tomato variety you're growing, and also whether it's feeling like spring where you are, because I know in different parts of the UK we're all at sort of different parts, and especially different parts of the world. But in some parts of the UK, maybe if you're more north, the daffodils may not even have started to flower yet. They may have just started to sprout, whereas here they're sort of in mid-flower at the moment, which is quite nice. And this plant behind me here, I'm not sure what it is if I'm completely honest, is actually looking quite good, and the flowers are coming out because this plant flowers before the leaves come out. So let me just show you that. Yeah, so it's looking quite nice and like quite springy, the garden. But anyway, I hope you did enjoy this video. I hope you really did learn something about how to sow tomatoes, and maybe a few sowing tips that are generalised along the way. So thank you for watching this video. Make sure you go down below, hit the subscribe button, the like button, and the little bell icon to make sure you're notified next time I upload a new video. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.